Oh my God, Will, we are live. We're doing a thing.
Dude, I just took a 5-second breath because it told me to.
It said it right on screen. You had to do
Yeah,
it.
I
I'm not
held
breathing
my
too good.
breath.
I came home from ScaleCon with a little bit of Vegas crud, which is
Oh,
not
dude,
COVID.
Vegas, that is
It's just special
disgusting.
to Vegas crud.
Ugh,
I want to say I'm a little disappointed in
that's
you, bro.
limited edition.
I like the T-shirt, but I thought you'd bring better hair.
Well,
You're hiding it, man. I'm
you
not okay.
know, if you saw in the previous chat, Matthew Fox, good friend of mine, local. Hey, Matthew, I know you're here. You live in
I
Amityville.
forgot you
That's
guys
where I
are
used to
super
live.
close. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
But he said it might be like a Dragon Ball Z episode, and I realized that if my hair wasn't covered, me going Super Saiyan is just terrifying. So
I am not pop culture relevant enough to be a Dragon Ball Z guy. Like I'm old and old. Yeah, that's not my jam.
more specifically, I forgot to shave my head this morning, so
Okay,
it looks a little
that's a
scary
thing.
under there.
Me too. I've got the been outside preparing for a hurricane hair. So yeah, yeah. But
That needs to be a legit haircut style now.
yeah.
Pre-hurricane hair.
Looks like folks are wandering their way in. So that's why Napa was never a super.
It's very. These are gonna all go over Alex's head. Every
Yeah, I
single
don't get
one.
any of
But
it.
you're
It's
right.
like I'm like,
Because he had no hair.
I
You
don't
need hair to
understand.
be Super Saiyan.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that reference. Sunny southern Mexico. Josh has got it figured out. Like Amanda was complaining that it's getting cold up in New York, and I'm down here getting rained on a little bit. And
I don't know what Amanda's talking about. 60 degrees is fantastic. Like you can walk outside and not sweat, which I love.
yeah,
I can mow my lawn today and actually like finish and say, "Oh, I don't need to immediately take a shower. I can
yeah.
get some other things done."
Gotta love East Coast living. Like anywhere you're at, it's 90% humidity.
Yeah, it's great. Well, not this time of year, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we got some folks in a room. So we got 20 or 25 of us here. So let's kick this thing off, man. Let's start having a conversation. We came here to talk mastering MSP sales. And what Will and I talked about when we were getting ready for this was number one, I was preparing for a hurricane, not preparing for a talk like this. But number two, the big thing is you guys need your questions answered, not to be preached to for an hour. So we're going to open up with some really broad, generic topics and kind of talk through them. But I would love for the chat and the Q&A to light up as you guys talk through what you're doing today, and what you're working to fix, what's broken, what do you need to do better. I would love in the chat for folks to tell us who here is an owner versus who here is an employee who's responsible for sales and selling, because that kind of changes the conversation a little bit. It kind of changes the game a little bit. I'm not a huge fan of like the Gary V's and the Alex, what the heck is his name? The guy with the big muscle headed guy with all the gyms. Not a huge fan of those guys, but I do listen to them a little bit because every now and again they say something smart. I can't remember which one of them said it, but one of them said, as a small business owner, you have two jobs. One, sales. Two, teaching someone to do everything else. And I think that's just super important. Like as MSPs, the biggest majority of MSPs are sub $2 million in revenue. And I'm a strong believer that at least up to 2.5 million in revenue, the owner has to be leading the charge in the sales process. There's always some head trash around that. I'm sure you've heard it, Will, working with MSP owners at Fifth Wall. Like, I'm technical. I'm not a sales guy. Sales is hard. It's just not my thing. I don't like it. There's always something that folks are pushing back on. But what's your experience in talking to MSPs about like who runs this thing?
Something that really surprised me when I entered the MSP space. I mean, my background, I was in ministry, I was teaching, I was doing, all sorts of different things to make ends meet to live on Long Island. It's not cheap here. So I was doing different things and I got into the cyber insurance world and I was working with insurance agents and they're a very special breed. The types of conversations you have. And when I switched over to the MSP space and started working with MSPs, the first thing I thought I was going to run into was the socially awkward guy who lives in his mom's basement kind of mindset, right? Like that's kind of where your head goes when you think the IT person. But after going to these conferences pretty regularly, I'm running into people who are quite personable. Like they're good at having conversations. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to understand their business. They're doing these things. So there's this Connor was that guy. It's true.
Yeah. I ran into that socially awkward guy at a trade show.
Connor, even as a socially awkward dude who lived in his parents' basement, you're capable of carrying good conversations. And like this is what I'm kind of getting at is You might not be good at sales, but being good at sales, I think sometimes is a roadblock that you create in your own mind, because oftentimes people are going to buy from you if you can teach them well and if they trust you. If you come in and you're just trying to, like, the door-to-door Verizon guy who shows up to your door and is trying to just get you to buy Verizon services, which do not work in your neighborhood because Verizon, um, their towers are terrible here,
That's
but
the
they're still
AT&T
trying
guys
to
coming
sell
here.
you, right? It's like,
Yeah.
what are you trying to do here, buddy? But when you strongly believe in the product that you're pushing, and you have the ability to engage in a legitimate, good conversation with the person you're engaging with, I mean, those are kind of the keys to getting the sales process off the ground, at least in my experience.
Well, you mentioned one of my favorite words, and I repeat these so often that I think sometimes Kyle feels like I invented them. But you said people buy from you when they trust you, and I think there's three parts to that. It's know, like, and trust. Right? It's always beneficial when you walk in the door and somebody already knows who you are. That's a start. That's an easy in. Like is a whole other thing, and there are people who will never buy from you just because of who you are. And that's okay. I'm kind of a snarky asshole when when I'm in a sales meeting. That's who I am in person, and it's authentic. And there are people who will buy from me just because I make them laugh a little bit. I make them realize that none of this is that serious, and if we take it all that serious, we're all going to go crazy together. And then the third one is trust. So you'll hear me talk about know, like, and trust in the sales process so much because there's a certain metric of like we have to get in front of people enough that they not only know who we are, but they feel like they're connected with us. And one of the things that happened to me at Lifecycle Insights that was just insane, I'm at the trade show booth at IT Nation, and multiple people came up to us and said, "Hey, can we take our picture with you? We just love you guys." And we only knew half of them, maybe less, by face, by name, exactly who they were. And the reality was we had been in front of them on webinars and on live streams and even just our open office hours calls. We had our cameras on and they didn't for some reason. Um, but they knew and liked and trusted us enough that they would refer us to anybody we wanted because they saw us as somebody who they wanted to do business with. And I just think that's important. It's a really interesting thing that we don't talk enough about.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of what you're saying, and you said something, tweak a little bit. Connor brought it up. He said, "Like, if you're not liked but you're trusted, you'll go far in sales." Um, and I mean, I agree with that. There's a difference between, and this is like this kind of thing where I'll say this to I've said this to my siblings before. I was like, "Hey, I love you, but I don't like you right now," because at the end of the day, to be liked is the kind of thing where I feel like you're going to have to present realities to clients where they're not going to be excited about what you're sharing to them right now, whether it's how much something's going to cost, what the security solution is, what it's protecting them from, how long it's going to take to implement, or maybe how much downtime they might experience in certain situations. I don't know. It could be a variety of things, but I'm just thinking through some of the realities that if you are trusted and you are having conversations, but they respect you because you've earned their respect, then and they see that what you're doing is ultimately beneficial to them, then I mean they're going to move forward. I mean, I'm just looking at this comment from Ben. My clients that know me almost never hesitate to buy what I tell them they need because they know I'm not the sales guy that just sells them stuff. I mean, isn't that what it comes down to? You're
But I
ultimately
would push on that a little bit because those people probably also like Ben or at least respect Ben,
respect
right?
Ben. Yeah.
The guy who's not liked actually they'll close some sales, but they'll have to work harder to get them, and every sale will be an uphill push.
Yep.
And I know this because there was a copier guy in Delaware where I had my MSP for years. And every now and again, a customer of mine would call me and go, "Hey, we're getting a new copier installed. I bought it from," and his name was Mike. It's a generic enough name. I don't have to really call him out. But we bought it from Mike over at XYZ Copier Company. And I went, "Really? How come?" And they're like, "Well, mostly we bought it so he'd stop calling us and go the hell away." And the guy was just known for being super annoying, super pushy. Just he was just a pit bull as far as getting in front of people and continuing to badger them until they would buy. Um, he barely made his quotas. When his company got sold, he was the sales rep that got let go. Um, and he made his numbers enough that they were happy with him at the old company, but the new company looked at him and said, "This isn't the culture we want. This isn't who we want to be known for." And if this guy was a rock star and was absolutely killing it, maybe they would have kept him, but he was doing just enough. And so you make it harder on yourself when you become the guy who is unliked. Um, so I think those two are super critical. Trust is a big one, but liked is a big chunk of that.
Yeah.
And
Do
pardon
I
me.
have the ability to, like, pull
Okay.
comments up into this, or is that something
I think
Amanda
there's a
has?
button for that. Yeah, you can.
I don't know how this works.
Yeah,
Anyway,
this thing's
Max
fancy.
said, "I'm really struggling to get" this could transition a little bit here, Alex. "I'm really struggling to get my salespeople to do all their activities and struggle to
Yeah.
find a good MSP salesperson."
Yep.
What is a good MSP salesperson?
Well, I would say to start with, this is why I go back to, as the owner, you have two jobs: selling things and teaching someone to do everything else. Because most folks are looking for someone to solve the sales problem for them, and they do it through abdication, not delegation. And abdicating sales is 100% the way to fail. And everybody struggles with this in the MSP space. They say, I'm not good at it, so I'm going to go find somebody who is. I read this book called Who Not How, and the author was super convincing, and he told me I should go find a who because I'm not the how guy. And I just want to call bullshit. Sales is a process just like any other thing that MSPs do. We roll out Windows machines, right? And we have a process. We stick a USB in, we reload the OS. Maybe we kick off some automations with like an IMI bot or something. It goes and downloads our RMM agent and installs it, joins it to a domain or joins it to an Azure directory, whatever. And then maybe we install some Office and do a bunch of other things. And this is a script that we've built that performs this. It's a process we've built using scripting to perform this elaborate set of functions. And then we go look at sales and go, "Ooh, it's black magic. I'm afraid of that. I don't know how to do that. I'm not good at it, so I should just go find somebody else." And so the point behind sales is it's just another process, but you have to fine tune that process. If I took somebody who wasn't technical and said, "Hey," or who didn't understand my business and said, "Hey, go write scripts to automate machine onboardings," they would fail because they wouldn't know what the expected outcome is. Bringing in a salesperson from the outside, not giving them solid leads, marketing support, lead gen, not giving them all the things that they need to support them, just sets them up for failure. And we
That's
get
so
this over
good.
and over and over, and we wind up with what Max is saying. I can't find a good guy, and what that means is I tried to hire a salesperson instead of someone who is, and you're looking for a unicorn when you find this person who is capable of building from zero a sales process in a business that's strange to them, and then turn into a sales leader to hold people accountable for it. So this is why I say you have to do it as the owner until it is such a process that it's just bang, 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 next step, next step, next step, because that's when we're capable of bringing the next person in. And as almost as if we were prepared for this, I have a fancy little slide that
While
kind of
you're bringing
shows.
that up,
Yeah.
there's part of the challenge we run into at Fifth Wall, right? I mean, we do cyber insurance, and insurance licensing and people who understand MSPs are already a whale in the space, right? An insurance person who understands MSPs is already a whale. Now that insurance person who does specifically only cyber insurance and understands MSPs is like the unicorn, almost impossible to find, right? So going out there and finding that person is very difficult, but uh, rather saying, okay, look, we need to go out and hire a salesperson. Well, in order to bring in a salesperson who doesn't understand the industry, or maybe they're licensed, but they don't know cyber, they don't know MSPs, whatever it is, we need to make sure that we have all the processes and education in place and support system, like you're saying, to make that person successful. And I think that's probably one of the challenges is we want to, it's so, oh, I'm going to hire this salesperson at my MSP. I'm going to bring this person in. They understand technology. So get out there and sell it to clients. When in reality, you almost need to be there in the wings to teach them what your MSP's culture is like. How do you interact with clients? How are you setting them up to be able to interact with clients and to successfully do that? Are you introducing them? Are you giving them pathways? Are there processes in place that they're not just coming in and grasping at straws, trying to figure out how your sales process works? So I do think that's vitally important. So just to
Well,
add
and,
to
and
what you were
and
saying.
Ben says his best MSP salespeople are techs that have come out of that role and have done a good job coming out of that role. Be careful with that because some techs don't have the EQ to be a salesperson, to be in front of folks and do consultative selling. That said, I had very good luck with an engineer who became an inside salesperson, and we called him an account manager. But and he even did some hunting, in his downtime and off of referrals and things like that. When I sold my company, we had several accounts that he had closed that I had never met because They were a referral from one of his customers. He walked in the door and closed them. And then he managed the account forever. And I had to call 4 strangers and go, hey, I sold my company and I'm not going to be the one you would call with a problem anymore. And they go, well, why do I care? Ross is the one I always dealt with. And those were great. Those were fantastic. But you do run a risk with a tech that they are too techy and that they just create an issue for you. The purpose of me throwing this slide up is just to show you guys what a sample process might look like. I like this little 5-step process. We built this along with the folks over at Ninja One when I was at Lifecycle Insights and doing some conversations with them about what good MSP sales looks like. This shouldn't be your process, but it'd be a great place for you to start. If you're like, hey, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. Sales is black magic to me. Start with this. Grab this, download it, go take a look at it. And what we're looking at is 5 simple steps here. Intro call. Somehow I wound up with a prospect on the phone. What am I trying to do here? I have a pretty standardized list of questions. We usually go through an exercise and break these out and just put them down on paper so you have them in front of them. How many computers do you have? What's the reason you called me today? How come you called me instead of the other guy who does your support right now? Like, what did he do so wrong that you chose to call me today instead? And what we're looking for is a few disqualifiers, right? If somebody is not going to call the other guy to try and smooth things over and work things out when they're unhappy, they're going to treat me the same way. Do I really want that customer? If it's about price, do I really want somebody who's so price conscious that they're shopping for the guy who's $5 cheaper than the last guy or doesn't want to call the last guy because he's a little expensive? So what we're looking for is get to my know early and qualify this prospect to make sure that they understand what it's like to work with me. One of my questions here, and you guys are going to, somebody in the crowd is going to go, no, that's stupid. You can't get away with that. One of my questions here after they tell me how big their company is, when they tell me they're 10 users, I'm going to say, look, Mr. Prospect, for a typical customer in your space, in your situation and with your struggles, I'm going to be between $2,500 and $3,500 a month. If I came back to you after we do all the conversations and all the work and present a proposal that's in that range, can we be friends or are you going to throw me out of my ass? And that's just me calling out price early. I never want to get to the end and have to defend my price and have to have somebody go, oh my God, that's 4 times what I thought I was going to pay. There's no way I can move the needle so far in the last meeting to get that person to come say yes. And fancy sales coaches will come in and go, don't worry, we'll teach you how to overcome objections and be a flexible sales ninja. You're not that guy. So beat that objection early, beat it often, bring it up at every single step. Price should never be your objection when you get to the end. It's fine for them to say, oh, you know what? Today I'm paying $250 a month for monitoring only with a guy who just comes out and buckles things up when something breaks it. And I go, well, that's why you get slow response time. You're not his priority, and you need to understand that. Would you pay more to be my priority, or do you want to price closer to what you're paying today? And if you want to price closer to paying what you're paying today, congratulations, you're getting exactly what you're paying for. And I'm sorry, you're getting exactly what you're paying for.
You know, it's this is kind of on topic, kind of an aside, but what you're saying is I can't stand when I go to a website for some sort of SaaS product or I have a conversation in sales and one, the like you said, the pricing is presented at the end, but also when the pricing just isn't presented at all. And it's almost like you need to have this entire product suite list of all the things that you can gain access to based on the tier you're doing, but if you want that pricing, you got to call to book an appointment. And I'm like, this is a problem for me because you are spending, and just to your point, you're going to spend that entire sales call justifying your pricing before they even know what the pricing is.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with that is you're kind of making it backwards because you're saying all this great stuff, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, it's going to cost you this much, and now they're immediately forgetting everything you just said, and they're going back to.
They
Well,
feel
my
like I'm
guy's
the guy with
saying,
the fishing pole, right? With the dollar on it that's like pulling it
yeah,
out of the way, going, you got to be
yeah,
faster than that, right? We don't want to be that guy. We want
no,
to have them look at us in the beginning and go, oh shit, these guys are premium. They're expensive. When Will comes back to talk to me, I'm going to have to tell him, I'm going to have to get out of Will why he's so fancy that I should be willing to pay his premium price. That's who we want to be, which takes us to this next step. And Max, I see your question, and I'm not forgetting to the conversation about inside versus outside sales. We'll get to that. Interviewing the stakeholders, and this says stakeholder, it should be stakeholders. Anyone in the organization who has a heavy leverage on technology. Number one, I want the CEO and the CFO and the COO. But I always ask my CEO and my COO, like, hey, who in your organization do you really trust? If there was somebody in the organization who you would go to and talk about this, and they would come up with an objection, or even be a big proponent of this and say they want to move it forward, we should have a conversation with them so that when we have all these nerdy talks and all this technical jargon, you don't have to play telephone and go back and explain something to them that is not in your bailiwick, and that's okay. But really, what we're talking about here about tech is, why did you call me? What's broken in the business? How is tech getting in the way of the business? My favorite question to ask here is one that I think Wes Spencer and I both stole this from Brian Blakely. And he says, Mr. Stakeholder, Mrs. Stakeholder, just answer a question for me. How does money move through your organization? Will, how does money move through fifth wall? Right. And then Will can tell me, well, we have this portal where somebody comes in and fills out a form. And once they fill out a form, we hook them up with a sales rep, and the sales rep sells them some insurance. And once we process the insurance, we have to go out and buy the policy, and we have to do this thing and that thing. And, then we set them up for a follow-up over here in a CRM. And as they're talking through this, I'm able to go, ooh, portal. Tell me about the portal. Tell me about the form. Where's that hosted? What's that like? How critical is that to your business? If that were to disappear tomorrow, what happens to the company? Now, if your client is not an insurance company, but your client is a manufacturing company, they're out on the shop room floor going, we process a purchase order, and then raw material goes into that machine over there, and it spits out sprockets and widgets. And those have to make their way out to my end customer. Well, Mr. Customer, how important to you is that machine then? Is that the only machine in the world that does that thing and makes that particular sprocket or widget? If that were down, what would your risk be? And we can start to unpack this. And what this helps us do is identify that Windows XP box that's sitting behind the floor, behind the door in the closet, that hasn't been patched in 100 years because the software doesn't support it. And it lets us see where that risk lives and be able to have that conversation with the customer early about what might happen, right? If CrowdStrike pushes a bad patch and Delta's down for 4 weeks, right? We want to talk about that early and often and make sure we're not Delta.
Alex, is there a kind of, I don't know, a point here where, because I'm looking at Ben's comment. He said, I started my career in IT with the mentality of sell them on a solution to a problem they don't know they have. Primarily because it shows you're observant and aren't just looking for a buck. I have the skill set to see things under cover and address them, right? So this mindset, and I love that, because the mindset to me when I read that is not, oh, Ben, you're so smart and you're brilliant. And you're able to just do things that most people can't, as much as I see Ben saying, look, I'm going to customize the solution options, at least to some degree, to fit the business need that exists. Because most business owners, when you think of MSP sales, most small business owners probably do not know just what problems they have. But if
Yeah.
you're just going in there and you're saying, well, here is these are the specific security controls and tools that Reddit has told me I need to have in my stack, and I'm going to go in there and that's what I'm going to sell people. Why? Why are you selling those things? Just because Reddit said it?
Right.
Like, do you know what these security controls are doing? Do you understand why this particular business that you're soliciting to would need them?
Yeah.
And if you're an MSP, which I'm about this, right? But if you're an MSP who says, hey, every single one of my clients gets my stack, and either it's an all or nothing approach, which I know more and more MSPs are doing at this point, which I think is great. But are you taking a stack that's fairly advanced to a business that may not have the funds to implement that entire stack? But you're just saying everyone needs it, so I'm gonna go. Like, are you soliciting to the right people at that point?
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, and
how
and,
how
and I'm going to
how
soften
in
Ben's
depth
point
do we
just a
get?
little. I'm going to soften Ben's point just a little. You may be helping them solve a problem that they know damn well that they have, that they
Fair.
didn't think that technology could solve, or that you could help them solve. Most businesses, if you ask them, where does your technology fall flat, or where are you doing things by hand that you feel like you ought to be able to do it with technology? Some businesses will be able to tell you that, be able to help you to the problem. Other businesses just never thought about having a conversation about how money moves through the organization and where it might fall off the table if tech didn't do its job. And Ben kind of asked a follow-up question, like, what do you do when the customer comes back and says, well, somebody else is 3/4 the price? I love this. You know what that means? It means they want to know why they should pay a premium, and they're probably willing to pay the premium. They just need to know why we're different. And this gives me the opportunity to open up and sit down with them and go, let's talk about the conversation we were having with the other vendor. I'll compare my quote to theirs. Let's go talk about it. Let's go look at what we're doing. Um, let's sit down and have the conversation about how I'm going to help you with strategic planning, and how I'm going to help you build forecasts and budgets and run risk assessments. Show me how often they're going to do that for you. Show me where all of this stacks up. My favorite answer to that, Ben, is, and I used to give this answer all the time. Look, Mr. Prospect, there's always going to be somebody out there who's willing to go out of business faster than me, but I'm not in a race to the bottom. I'm going to deliver you an amazing service, and I'm going to live up to what's in my contract, and I'm going to be the strategic guide that you need to walk you through your technology. And I'm sure you've talked to other IT guys. I'm sure you know that they come in here and talk to you about widgets and gadgets and megabytes and petaflops and flux capacitors. You and I won't have those conversations. Those are for my nerds. You and I are going to have conversations about your business and about strategy. If that feels really comfortable to you and feels better than the guy who's three-quarters of my price, great. Otherwise, if you want to talk to techs in the Philippines and or offshore anywhere, and not be that guy, that's okay too. Like I don't need every piece of business. And when you do that, I'd even be okay saying, well, if price is your big deciding factor, maybe we're not for you. Maybe you can't afford us. Go push back on their ego a little bit. Go challenge them just a little bit, because it's super valuable to kind of put them back on their heels. But what they're saying to you is, I'm willing to have a conversation about your price, and I think that is super valuable. So thanks,
That
Ben.
I like this though, because if you bring up price early on in the conversation, recognize now that the flip that has happened. Because if you wait till the end, and I kind of brought this up, if you wait till the end, so you just shared all these things that you do, and you may or may not be amazing at explaining it on a level. Wes Spencer, not me. Wes Spencer um always kind of uses the ELI 5 approach, right? Explain it like I'm five.
Mhm.
Maybe you struggle to explain your security solutions to a business owner like they're 5 years old, and that's okay. But if the first thing you do is explain this long list of services that you're going to provide and then hit them with the price, they have now forgotten everything you said, and their focus is purely on the price
On the
now.
dollars, right?
Whereas if you start with the price, now the conversation, they might come back right away and say, well, I'm this other guy, I'm already paying three-quarter the price. Like, what's the point? And now you can deliver the conversation of, here,
Why we're
let
here.
me explain to you what you get with that, because this is very different from, and you brought up some of those points, right? Like maybe you're talking to outsourced customer service, or you could have those pieces, but there's even just the active management. And I guess here's the other piece: is your pricing justified by the services that you're providing?
Yeah.
And I think it's important. If you're having a conversation with someone who's saying, well, someone's offering me something for three-quarters of the price, and you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, so why is no one taking me up on mine? Are your services justifying the price?
And do you understand what makes you different, or are you looking just like everyone else? I was at a marketing conference last week where there's a bunch of vendors out there selling you um, marketing solutions. Look, we'll do your marketing for you. We'll write the ad copy for you. We'll give you marketing campaigns that we give to 400 other MSPs and let you send them out in the mail. Well, now they're helping you look just like everyone else. If you look to outsource marketing, by God, make sure that it's custom to you and that it identifies your unique selling proposition. Every MSP is different. Every one of you is a little different. We were different because we helped our clients budget and forecast and plan, and we were committed to never surprising them with a random knock knock, I need money because Windows 11 is about to die. It was not a thing we did. We did early. We screwed up and we got in trouble for it. And that's why we adopted that methodology. And we started to tell folks, we will help you plan 3 years out for technology spend. There was no more conversation. What, my guy just knocks on the door and tells me how much money he needs. I'm like, yeah, we used to be that guy too. And we learned from our customers that we need to be better. Let's move on, because I want to go through the rest of this real quick. And then I want to get to Max's original question. Technical evaluation, that third step. I'm going to separate the stakeholder interview, me going out in my suit coat and not being asked to step under, to crawl under the desk and check on a printer or something, with the tech coming out. I do this to establish my professionalism, myself as a fellow C-level executive, and my expertise as a solution salesperson, as opposed to as a technician. If I go out there with my cargo pants and my screwdriver in my back pocket to go on a sales call, they're going to expect me to crawl under the desk and do the technical things, and they're not going to look at me the same way that they look at someone who comes in being the professional. But this is where we go out and run our scans on the network, try and check for anything that might be sideways out there, pick your tools. I'm not going to get into that on this call, but go out and send your engineer out. And what you're looking for is, can the engineer find a technical reason that backs up the pain they gave you in step 2? Because if I can align and say, oh, that blue 3Com hub in the closet, that's the reason your primary line of business application runs slow, and we can fix that. That's not a problem. If we can identify pains and problems on the technical side and attach that back to a business pain, we win. Hands down, that's how we win. So that's a pretty simple one. We just tell the customer, I'm going to send an engineer out. He's not going to pester you with anything. He knows his gig. He's just going to ask you to open some doors and let him crawl around and look at things. He goes out and does his piece. We come back to the office, and my salesperson and my engineer compare notes and see how much they can line up. And once they do, we prepare a presentation, and then we call the customer. Mr. Customer, good news. We've got a plan put together. We think we have everything figured out, but I just want to ask you a couple questions. No matter how good it is, we're always going to ask a couple questions, because I need to remind them of the budget. I need to remind them of their pain. And then I need to remind them that everyone who can say yes or no to this decision is going to be in the room for step 5. So my questions are going to be around the pain and those kind of things. I'm going to remind them that we talked about the budget and say, well, good news. We talked about being between $2,500 and $3,500 a month. You're kind of signaling to me that we found the real problems that you've got. And the good news is, I don't think we're going to be at that 3,500 number. We're not going to be at 2,500, but the good news is we're going to be well within that range when we talk tomorrow. Can I just confirm that your CEO and COO and CFO, all the people you told me needed to be in the room, will be there for that call tomorrow? I would hate for me to come in and do all this explaining, and then one of you to have to go back and try and make sense of it to somebody else who's involved in the decision-making process. This is a incredibly technical presentation. It won't be, but I'm going to tell them that. And then just ask them to make sure everybody's in the room. And when we go back to close, we're going to do the exact same thing again.
Are you wasting time with that? If you're not making sure that those decision makers are on that call, then either you have to wait on the people who are there to explain it, or you have to have another call. So you're just extending your sales cycle, and you're spending more time and more energy and more effort on something that you could have handled with less hours.
Right,
and less
100%. And as we go in to make the close, let's talk about how we can make the close without extending the sales cycle. My favorite thing to do in an MSP sales call is wrap up and tell the customer, like, congratulations, we're right where we needed to be on price. We're at $3,250. We told you we might be upwards as high as $500 or $3,500, but we're at $3,250 a month. We've solved for all the pain and all the problems it looks like you've got. It seems like we're there. Seems like we've crossed the finish line. Do you want to go ahead and sign the agreement now, or should I stand out in the hallway while you talk about me behind my back? I can say that because, like I said, I'm a snarky jerk. Find a way to say that fits your personality. Don't try and be me, but find a way to say, hey, do you guys want to go ahead and sign up right now, or should I just step out of the room so that you guys can have a private conversation? You can say that very, very nicely. What's the worst thing they're going to tell you? Will, come up with the worst answer to that you could possibly give me as a salesman. Like, what's the biggest shoot down you can give me?
The biggest shoot down?
Yeah,
I
how
don't know.
can you
I'm too
tell me
nice for
I'm not
that.
going to sign today, or we need longer than that to decide, or whatever? Like,
Oh,
if you try
man.
and throw a curveball at that, there's no way I can miss.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the normal things you hear are, "Oh, well, let me just I need some time to look at this," or I "Oh, it's not." And you already brought up that it's in the budget. You said we're right where we need to be, so I can't even use that as an excuse now. Um,
Yeah.
I'm even thinking, like, at this point, it's
The best they're going to tell me, right, is either I need some time to think it over, or I'm getting multiple proposals and we need to see those, right? So let's address both of those. You need some time. Great. Well, I totally understand this is a huge decision. I tell you what, nobody likes a salesperson that calls them 47 times. And I promise I don't want to call you 47 times, but I will. Why don't we put a day on the calendar that I can agree to follow up with you to make sure that you can give me a clean yes or no, and I don't have to harass you? Would that be a good way to move forward? Will's probably going to appreciate the fact that I don't want to chase him and call him 47 times, even after the threat of calling him 47 times, right? And I have never had someone not give me a follow-up date for that. The other one of, hey, we're going to look at 3 quotes and you're the first one. Great, no problem. I get it. I'm sure you understand there's a lot of technicalities in here, and I'd just like to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. Would it be fair for us to set a date to follow up after you look at the 3rd proposal, just to remind you of the things that might be better or different in our proposal? And you can take the names and prices off all the rest of them, but it'd be great if we could look at them side by side, and I can give you some guidance on what you'd be gaining with somebody else, or what you might be missing out by not going with us. That has worked for me so well in multi-bid situations. I've had people email me their competitors' quotes. Oh, look, there's a storm coming. Sorry about that. And your iPhone does not want you to shut that one off. So, I've even had folks email me prices with the competitor's name and pricing on it. Quote, full quote. Here you go. So that's how I would handle MSP sales. And the point of having this sales process isn't that you do all those steps. It's that every time you do one of those steps, if something fails, if something doesn't go right, you step back and look at it and say, what could I have done better or different to improve it next time? Back to my analogy of how do you roll out a Windows 11 machine? Well, if I have a script that rolls out a Windows 11 machine and I get a blue screen, I'm going to go back and troubleshoot. I'm never going to do that thing that caused the blue screen again. I'm going to do something else. A sales objection, a big objection that turns this on its head is a blue screen. It's no different than that. Put your technical brain on and go, I just got a blue screen out of my customer. I made his brain
I love
break
that.
and he wasn't able to come along with me for the ride. I need to go back and troubleshoot my process and make sure I don't do that again. If I get a perfect result, if I get exactly where I wanted to be, then I need to go back and say, what did I do right? What's the new trick I learned? What was the thing that I said that I need to say every time from now on? And this is where sales is just a process. It's the exact same thing we do on the technical side of our lives. And we make it super complicated. We attach this, it's black magic thing to it when we're looking at it from the MSP perspective or from the owner's perspective, because we just don't enjoy it. It's not fun. So it's easier to call it black magic and say, oh, I'm just always going to be bad at it. I should hire someone.
It's some of the best salespeople. I mean, just in what you're saying, are people who have done this a lot and they've learned from what they've done. And I think that's clearly, I mean, that's the key takeaway here is, are you reviewing and thinking about and taking the time to kind of debrief that previous sale, even if it's short,
Yep.
but whether it was a success or not a success, you need to be able to go back and say, okay, what worked, what didn't work. And if you're doing those things, then the next time you go to make a sale, to have that conversation, you kind of know what to adjust and what to tweak. Where does confidence come into this too, though, Alex? Like,
Confidence comes
I'm
with time, right? The only thing that builds confidence is practice. So, you have to do it twice the same way, thus the process, or you'll never get good. You'll never get confidence. It'll feel like your first time every time. And we all know, pick something that you did the first time. I went snowboarding once in my early 20s. I've never been again because I was terrible at it. And I went, this must be for people who are inclined for snowboarding. I'm just not built for this. I came home with a bruised tailbone. Not fun. So practice makes confidence, but having a system, running a process, and knowing what your next step is going to be before you do this step also helps build some confidence. And to your point about kind of tearing this apart after every step, if you're trying to train somebody else to run sales, have them call you after every step. Hey, I just had an intro call with a customer.
yeah,
Will, I just had an intro call with a prospect. Great. How did it go? I think it went amazing. Cool. Did you cover price? Ooh, I forgot that step. Okay, great. Well, we'll just remember to do that next time. What did you cover? And then you can kind of talk through it, right? But it's great to have a sounding board, somebody to come back and bounce this stuff off of, because it is super easy to kind of skip off your process and wander off in the wrong direction. But it's also, it's fresh in your brain. Well, it's right there. I'm always going to ask somebody who's training under me, what went well? What did you do well that you're really proud of getting off of that call? And then we can talk about what we could do better or different. But always reinforce what's the thing you did that worked really, really well that you want to make sure you do next time? Because this is reinforcing positive process and making sure that it builds on.
I mean, I will say though, I mean, if you're going into a business to sell cybersecurity, to have these conversations, you do kind of have the backing of knowing that what you're providing is something that they need. Even again, going back to what I said before, even if they don't realize they need it, it is something they need. Versus, I don't know. Back in the day when I was working at a traditional insurance agency, I would have salespeople come in who, want to be our new paper office supply provider. It's like, okay, well, I do need office supplies, but at the same time, like, I can go to Staples for those. Like, it's not the kind of thing that, like, you're providing something that is deeply needed because the average person cannot enable this stuff themselves. They can't walk into a store and say, I'm going to buy the cybersecurity. That's just not how it works. So you are providing something, so to have that piece of the confidence. And also, do you believe when you're walking into these businesses that what you are offering is better than your local competition?
Yep.
Have you taken the time to set in your mind what you think those differentiators are?
Yep.
And when you're having those conversations, are you highlighting those differentiators?
Now I'm gonna point at this and say, who knows your differentiators better than anyone else? How about your account manager? How about the person who has to go sit in front of every one of your existing customers and talk to them about how you guys are doing? And so, to Max's point earlier, who do I hire first? inside sales or outside sales, and do I separate them? If I'm $1 million MSP today, I hire an account manager. That guy should, doing his job well, pay for himself in project sales, basically upsells, cross sells, and renewals. Right? They should be able to pay for themselves day one, and upsells, cross sells, and renewals. So they increase somebody from an old plan to a new plan. They sell them additional products and services. If we have a VoIP offering, if we have a copier offering, if we have a whatever else we do offering, a line of business app or whatever, and then of course renewing existing contracts and making sure that we renew them back at higher revenue than the last time.
Yeah.
Um,
This is going
once
way
I,
back for a second, but Sheila asked a question a while ago, and when we were talking about, the meetings of, hey, I want to make sure all the decision makers are on this, blah, blah, yada yada yada. Like we were having that conversation, but she said, "Alex, can you please talk about how to get past the gatekeeper,
yeah,
who's the
let's do
leader?"
that after we finish Max's point here.
Okay.
Um, so hire your first account manager, knowing that they could become a salesperson if they're really good at what they do. You can shove them out of the building to go do outside sales. Once they get really good, they have a process. You can bring in another account manager. They can kind of cross train, replace themselves, and move into outside sales. When they move into outside sales, they're going to get a 25% pay bump. You're going to give them a much heftier commission for what they do outside. So there's a real opportunity here for them to go make more money as they make more money for the company. And nobody's able to go sit down in front of your new prospects and say, hey, what I experienced with my last with existing customers who were in exactly your shoes looked like this, and that's why you should do business with me, because I know and understand it and I've been there before. So Max, if you're struggling with hiring a salesperson right off the bat and shooting them out the door, go hire an account manager, get them started, get them to understand who you are, give them a year in that position, do new business sales yourself until then. Have your account manager work really hard to build referrals and take the referrals out and go do the sale yourself. Build the rest of that process and take your account manager and put them out on the road in a year if they're doing a good job. That's my advice to you. Sheila's question is great. Gatekeepers are paid to be gatekeepers, right? Their whole job is to make sure that nobody talks to the boss. Right? But when we sit down with the question here is, are you approaching them and trying to get an appointment with a gatekeeper, or have they already followed in from your marketing? Are they inbound and they want to talk to you? If they're inbound and they want to talk to you, and somebody's been tasked with, Will, I work for Will, and Will says, Alex, go get me 3 quotes from 3 MSPs. I don't want to talk to them or deal with them, but we got to save some money on this IT stuff. Go get it done. I just need to sniff out early that that's what's happening, and realize that if I can't get a hold of this person at this point in the business, I'm never going to get to talk to them once they're my customer. And either we need to have a shift of priorities and attitude in the organization, or they're just not a good fit for me, and that's okay. I think that probably 1 out of 4 opportunities that you come across is not going to be a good fit for you, and you should self-select no for those folks early in your sales process, and as early as possible in your sales process, and just said, this guy, we weren't going to win this one at a reasonable price. Probably wasn't the kind of business that we wanted. The problem is most MSPs only get 10 new ups, 10 new at bats every year, and putting 2.5 of those in the garbage can to start is a really bad thing. It doesn't feel good. So we have to get more at bats. We have to get more practice to get better at what we do. And then we have to find the ones where we're able to work our way around that gatekeeper. My best answer to that is nothing is more important to your business today than cybersecurity. A breach will happen. I prefer to talk to your CEO and COO and CFO before a breach and not after. And I think you can agree that they all need to have a plan in place on how we're going to figure this out, right? How we're going to prep ourselves for this, how we're going to be ready. Because as the only technology guy in town who's probably willing to be honest with you, Will, you're going to get breached one day. It's just going to happen. We can't protect you. If the federal government with all their resources can't protect themselves, I can't help you. If the MGM Grand can't protect themselves with all their money and resources, I can't protect you. What I can do is help you build processes, help you build security solutions that contain the blast radius when it happens, so that you can be one of the companies that was up in 6 hours when CrowdStrike went sideways, and not Delta, who was down for 4 weeks. If your current guy's not having that conversation with you and isn't trying to get in front of the folks who really own the process and the budget and how all this happens, then they're not doing you any favors. But if you're not willing to let me go have that conversation with the folks that ultimately have to sign on the dotted line for acknowledging the risk, then we probably can't do business together, and that's okay.
I'm convinced.
Well, I pay you to tell me you're convinced. No, I send you not Wes Spencer t-shirts to tell me that you're convinced.
True.
Um,
So,
yeah, Ben, it's not like we don't know the hurricane's coming, but the uh, the reality is there are a lot of folks in this channel who are in a whole lot worse spots than me. I'm almost 60 feet above sea level and quite a ways out of the path of this craziness. So yeah, the alerts have been going off all week, and we're numb to them now.
uh, Ben wrote, as someone who works with local government, I don't know using them as an example of all their resources can't protect them is good. Too much red tape.
Well, but as somebody who worked with municipalities, I'll tell you, when we started strategically planning with them, they almost all doubled their spend because they have this awesome thing called taxes. And it's awesome because we hate paying them, but they love collecting them. And as long
Mhm.
as they got something into their budget 12 or 18 months in advance, they could almost always find the money for it. Almost always. So, back in Delaware when I was running my MSP, we just had to figure out that how they operated. And that's something important to ask. I mean, I would ask that during onboarding for most of my customers. Just tell me about cash flow in your business. Are you one of those companies who has a retail Christmas down in down in Bethany Beach in Delaware? There's a furniture store called Creative Concepts. They used to be my customer. They're fantastic humans. That guy threatened my life, and he's probably part of the reason that Lifecycle Insights exists. But that's a whole other story. I surprised a redneck with a $30,000 bill, and he offered to introduce me to his shotgun. But the the business had a retail Christmas, but it wasn't Christmas. It was when people were opening their beach houses for the summer. They were down there buying furniture, bringing in designers and hanging tapestries and doing all kinds of fancy curtains and all that kind of stuff. So understanding his retail Christmas meant I knew I couldn't make any changes to his tech from about March to August. But after that, hey, he had just rung the cash register for 6 months straight. He was flush with cash. And if I came to him and said, hey, we're going to need to spend some money, but it can wait till after your retail Christmas is over, no problem. Thanks for letting me know ahead of time. I can set some money aside for that.
Something you're saying here, Alex, that I think we should acknowledge is that you're not just going in and selling, you're actively understanding what their financial situation looks like, and you are basing solutions off of that, off of budget cycles, um, off of income, off of cash on hand. Like you're knowing those things, and that's something I run into with MSPs a lot. I mean, classic insurance question is how much revenue does your business make? A lot of MSPs say, well, I don't talk about that kind of stuff with my clients because then my clients think I'm going to charge them more because they know how much money my business is bringing in. And it creates this whole thing. But on some level, are you engaging your clients on a budget conversation? Are you helping them set the cybersecurity budget? Are you creating expectations for them to know? I mean, you bring this up sometimes, like with end of life machines, or not even just cycling out those machines, saying,
Yeah.
"Hey, 5-year cycle." Or whatever the situation is, but you're creating the expectation so that you're not just dropping it on them either. It's not a surprise. It's not out of left field, but you're also doing it on their time and their understanding.
The owner from Creative Concepts from that furniture store said to me one day, and it was Windows XP was going out of life. He had two retail stores and a warehouse that had to be upgraded. And I came to him and asked for 30 grand. And basically I asked for 30 grand on about 8 weeks notice. And he said to me, like, the dollars is not the problem. The fact that you came to me asking for it as I'm just getting ready to ramp up for back to, for going back to business. I've just bought millions of dollars in inventory that's been placed on my floor. I have a cash flow problem. I don't have a revenue problem. I can pay for this. But it's going to piss me off because I already allocated all my cash for the season. And he said, if you want to run a better business, and the guy was kind of a mentor to me. He's probably 15 years older than me, and it was in a family business for 25 years and ran a really good business. And he said to me, he said, if you want to be a real consultant and not just an IT guy, you got to do better. And here's how I would like for you to do better for me. And I took that to heart. And we started planning all this for our customers, and we never had better customer relationships and my promise to you was, I will be the canary in the coal mine. I'll tell you about it ahead of time, not after the fact.
Yeah.
If I tell you an OS is end of life after its end of life, I haven't done you any favors.
No, it's not
I,
no
knew,
good.
I knew it was coming, and we think our customers know it's coming, right? We think they know as much as we do. We mentioned it once in passing. They must know. They must remember. I'm sure as soon as that conversation was over, they went and put the date on their calendar, and they're planning to stash away pennies until they can pay for it, right? Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
The number of people that I interact with on a daily basis who, granted, they're not business owners, but at the same time, I mean, they're not even doing security updates on their phone. They don't have them set to do to automatic update. They're just, I'll wait. I'll wait. And then it's like 6 security updates later. And it's just, so to think that your client is aware of when something is going to be end of life. And there's probably people walking around with iPhone 5 still,
Right.
because why not?
Right. It
So
still
it's just,
works. Hasn't got
it
me
still
breached
works.
yet, right? You've all heard that conversation.
Or they're not even thinking about the breach. I mean, that's your job to make them aware of those things, because in
Right.
reality, I mean, I'm not going to be thinking about those things on a daily basis if I'm not a cybersecurity minded
They have
person.
they have a business to run, right? Will has to sell insurance all day, and he happens to be a little nerdy and like to buy the latest iPhone, but other people in his office probably do not. And this is how our customers run. They have a real business to run. They have their business to run. And if you're a CIO, if you carry the title VCIO and you're not helping with budgeting, you failed your customers. If you're an account manager or a salesperson, maybe it's not your responsibility. But if you start behaving a little bit like a CIO, even though you're in a sales role and expected to close a quota, you'll find that your customers move with you better. So don't save that stuff for don't save the budget conversation for when you feel like it is your obligation or your responsibility, because you can get away with it and it'll make your job easier. So just go do it and just assume that they're going to come along for the ride. And if they don't, then you can step back and go, hold on a minute, how come we have a problem here? I'm just trying to help you. I threw up this next slide because I wanted to just have a quick conversation. This is something we don't see much in the MSP space. This is a Forrester conversation around sales. Forrester bought this thing called the B2B revenue waterfall, and they actually own this sales model. But I want to point out what Forrester seems to believe about sales, what this revenue model tells me Forrester believes. Some of the language that they use is different than what we use. You see at the top where they say targeted accounts and they have candidates and current customers. Notice that 75% of their sales funnel is current customers. I would call the candidates prospects. Notice that 25% is prospects. And also notice that the targeted opportunities are not just acquisition on the left-hand side. This is when we bring in a new customer, we acquire a new customer, but retention, upsell, and cross-sell. And of course, you'll hear me call those upsell, cross-sell, and renewal. But Forrester talks a lot about how much money is left on the table in the average business at your existing customers. And I think this is so true with MSPs. And that's why I say go bring in an account manager, because your account manager, if you bring them in, is going to be managing and owning upsell, cross sell, and renewal. And these things being right, these things being taken care of, will simply whittle their way down to more customers doing more business with you, the same customers doing more business with you. And then I would argue the one thing that's not listed here is referrals, and your account manager can get a ton of referrals. And we can talk about that another time if we have some questions that we want to dive into in our last 8 minutes here, or we can dive into referrals. I'm happy to do either. What do we got for questions here, Will?
Um, Ben asked, "Do you guys run into the situation of telling
Uh,
non-technical people too much technical details, and how do you find that happy medium?"
Man,
Um,
I wish I had brought one more slide. Go look up the Colin Powell 70-30 rule, I think is what it is.
oh yeah, it's 70/30.
Yep. And Colin Powell says when you're making any decision, as the Secretary of Defense, he said, when I was making a decision, I required my staff to bring me at least 30% of the information and no more than 70% of the information. If they give me less than 30, I feel uninformed, and I either will put off making a decision until I have more information, or I will make the wrong decision. And in his world, it costs people their lives. He said, if they brought me more than 70% of the information, I was almost always going to experience analysis paralysis and not make a decision at all, or at least make a decision too late. So as the window of opportunity was passed. And I think MSPs are very guilty of that. We either roll in the door and go, buy X because I said so. I know everything. You need my cyber widget. Let me give and we stop there. Or we go deep into the weeds and go, let me explain to you why XYZ, XDR, whatever is the next best thing. And we've got to have it. Let me give you all the details on why you need this thing. When in reality, the conversation for your customer should be, you have a business risk, you have exposure here. It would cost you this much to close this exposure that could potentially lose you this much. Does it make sense to spend a few bucks? The customer who needs more information, if you approach it that way about their business, will ask. And the customer who doesn't will feel informed enough to make a decision because you've shown them what the risk is, and we'll move on. This is why, Ben, this is why I don't like nerds in sales roles, because they tend to bring nerd words into conversations that don't deserve them or shouldn't have them. So this is why I push back on folks who say I was successful with a nerdy sales guy. I was successful with one, and he was probably our worst nerd, but a good sales guy. And he was probably a good sales guy because he was our worst nerd. He couldn't bring as much technical detail into the conversation. Right? If I have the choice, I'm going to let Jason Slagle go do Jason Slagle things. I'm going to let Wes Spencer go do, well, Wes is weird because he's a unicorn and he can dumb things down to English really, really well. But I'm going to let the technical operators go do technical stuff. And I'm going to have somebody who is way less technical having the sales conversation for exactly this reason.
You said something too that I think is, and maybe this is like a personalities thing, and I'm a New Yorker, so maybe that's part of it. But I've interacted with salespeople who effectively just tell you, like they speak to you as if almost like they're speaking down to you to tell you this is what you need to have. Like without me, you're useless. Like that kind of mindset. And that just is really off-putting because it's like I have these solutions. These are what you need. This is why. You kind of said it that way before. Like I'm the best. You need to go with me. And maybe I'm just resistant to it, but it's the kind of thing. I mean, it really annoys me. Like it makes me not want to work with that. But I don't care how persistent you are. I'm going to tell you no every time because you're a jerk. There's that side of it too. Which and that's why I like what's happening in the comments here. Like, hey, don't make people feel stupid. Like you said, the 70-30 idea. If you're going less than 30, you're kind of treating them like they're an idiot. If you go more than 70, now you're treating them. You're speaking to them in a way where you're just kind of
look how smart I am.
Nerd.
Look how many nerd things I can say.
Which is annoying.
Yeah, really
don't be that annoying salesperson. Boil it down to really simple language. Like,
and it's overwhelming.
Like first, it is.
Yeah, if they're not technical, it's super overwhelming. I love what Sheila said about how they handle revenue or how they handle the revenue conversation. I think she's right. I don't care what your annual revenue is. There are salespeople out there that will go ask what their annual revenue is and say, well, research says you should spend 6% a year in your industry on cyber, tech, whatever. I don't care. I don't care what the percentage is. I know that there's a minimum cost that it takes for me to get things right. And it's a math problem for me because I need to make 65% margin on your agreement and I need you to have these basics in place or I can't do business with you. I don't care if that's 4% of your revenue or 40% of your revenue. It's just the number I have to run a successful business. So I don't care about how much revenue they make. I love the question, like, when is your busy season? I always like to just ask, especially if I'm working with a nonprofit or a municipality or somebody like that, like, hey, do you get grant funding? Do you do annual budgets? Like, is there a time when we have to do all the prep for next year to get it in on time to make sure that we set you up for success?
Yeah. Ben just asked a really good question. And it's something that, what about the scenarios where clients say they want to know what they get out of an upgrade? So for example, Microsoft 365 Business Standard to Premium, where a big part is gaining security related benefits that they don't see. So it just feels like an expense. One, yes, you can give your input in a second, Alex, but my thought process is this idea that good technology and good security is running in such a way that you don't have to think about it, right? The less that they have to think about it, that's a good thing. So yes, explain to them what it does, but also explain to them just the added benefit of saying it's doing all these things and you don't have to do anything about it. Like that's a beautiful thing.
I'm a huge believer where cloud services are concerned to make sure that our customers know that technology does not ship secure by default. I'm looking up something real fast.
Microsoft Defender Basic.
So there is almost every cloud provider has one of these, some sort of a responsibility matrix. And you should sit down and just very high level review a security matrix or a responsibility matrix with your customers. Because what a security matrix says is I own this portion, customer owns this portion. Microsoft's a great example. I own making sure Exchange is up and online. You own making sure mail is deliverable. I own making sure that I authenticate passwords when you set them up. You own building out password policy and authentication policy and MFA and all of those other things. So there's a responsibility matrix there that says you're going to buy it in secure by default. And believe it or not, Mr. Customer, Microsoft can charge extra just for basic security requirements that are necessary to meet your obligations. And so we need to up you to the next license so that we can secure this in alignment with best practices. And this is why we align with frameworks. If you're not using a CIS framework or something else, we're going to have to end on this, and Jamie's going to give us the hook. But I will say, if you're not lining up with a framework, CIS is my favorite, but you can do NIST, you can do HIPAA, like take your pick. That gives you so much defensibility to sit down and say, well, you have to have this because if you get dragged into court, you're going to have to explain why you didn't do things that industry experts say are by default expected by a business. And I can't afford it is not an answer. It means you aren't running an efficient business. So yeah, I love CIS for the same reason, Connor. I am not super smart, and we looked at NIST. It made my head hurt, and CIS felt a whole lot more prescriptive. Yep, that's exactly what Microsoft does. But the thing is, it's not about a background picture, right? When you add that extra $950 a month at Microsoft, you get a whole lot of things like Microsoft Defender, which is one of the best antiviruses in the world when it's properly managed and configured. We want to make sure that we're doing all of the things that we need to do. So I need more money because I need more money is a terrible statement to make to your customer. But you have these security deficiencies, and we've assessed you against a known model. And in order to make you better, we have to deploy a more secure Microsoft product, a product with more options for security. So we need to move you to this next licensing level, and it will solve for this, and this off of the requirements. And that's going to improve your security standing this way. That's how you have the conversation. And we don't have to get into the nerdy bits about, oh, well, what you're going to get is Microsoft XDR that I can then turn over to Huntress's SOC and I can have them do real-time monitoring and eyes on glass. Like, I'm not going to have that conversation. The conversation we're just going to have is, look, in order to do this right, we have to buy a plan that includes a few more things. And what right looks like is not my measuring stick. I didn't get it from two bald guys on a Phin webinar. My measuring stick came from the Center for Security, an internationally trusted expert in cybersecurity. Those are great questions. Hey, thanks for all the interaction today, guys. It's been great.
So
I hope you got something out of it. I think we're due to turn you guys back over to the main room. So if you go back up to Mastering MSP Sales, there should be, I think they got a 20-minute break right now where you guys can go hang out. I will make sure that Jamie has these 2 slides that we used, and he can ship those out to anybody who asks for them. So make sure you just ping the Phin guys if you want these slides. I'm happy to share them.
Thanks, everybody.
Well, thanks for hanging out, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's so fun, man.
We thought the storm might get here a little earlier. There was a chance I just disappeared and you had to do it all on your own.
And that would have been a very different conversation. So thanks for not disappearing. Because you ever watch Wayne's World when Wayne quits the show and then they make Garth do it by himself? Because that's where my brain was. Good stuff, guys.
Nope, we got through it. Life is good. Storm's not coming till later tonight, so got plenty of time. All right, everybody. We're gonna bug out, but thank you so much.